Hey everyone. In this video I want to talk about how to raise your self-esteem. So I'll be sharing with you some tips that have helped me develop my own self-esteem, and I hope that they will help you as well. So to jump right into it, the first thing to practice is self-love. Now, self-love is kind of like a buzzword in today's world, but it actually is an incredibly useful thing, and it greatly enhances the quality of your life. So self-love basically just means treating yourself better, taking better care of yourself, and treating yourself the way you would somebody you love or deeply care about, like you would a best friend or even a family member. You wouldn't neglect them, you wouldn't let their health falter, you wouldn't be rude to them and berate them. You would want what's best for them, and you would support them and cheer for them and be there for them. All of those things you can do for yourself. And when you practice them, they inevitably help raise your self-esteem because you're treating yourself like you care about yourself. And if you care about yourself, then you're going to raise your self-esteem. Most people who have low self-esteem usually don't really like who they are. They don't care about themselves, and that helps their self-esteem be so low. It helps it remain that way. So when you start practicing self-love and treating yourself better, it raises your self-esteem quite naturally. Now, one of the main things you can practice here and should practice here is basically not tolerating that negative voice in your head. We all have it. I mean, everybody on this planet has it. I don't care how great the person's mindset is, everyone has that little nagging voice in the back of their mind. But we all listen to it to varying degrees, and people who have the best mindsets are usually not going to listen to that voice as much, if at all even. It'll still be there, but it'll be in the background and they'll just wave it off or ignore it. This is something you should train yourself to do as well, because if you have low self-esteem, you probably listen to that negative voice way too much. You give it too much credibility and too much power over you. So, a helpful thing for me that helped me stop listening to that voice as much was realizing this one thing, that's this fact, that that voice isn't something we're born with. It's not an inherent part of us. So what I mean is that's something that we are conditioned to have by society when we're growing up usually, because we learn a lot of these things when we're children, when we're too young to know that they're bad for us, and we don't have that knowledge to basically reject them right away. Because if we had that ability, that would be awesome. None of us would have that little self-critic in the back of our minds, because as soon as we were introduced to the thought processes or the criticism from other people that made us start thinking that way, we would just reject it all. But unfortunately, children aren't aware of these things, so they're not able to reject it in the moment. They have to wait until much later when they're an adult, and then they're finally aware that, holy crap, society was conditioning me, movies and entertainment media was conditioning me, my parents were conditioning me, my friends growing up, my bullies, if you had any through school, all of it conditions us, even the teachers. So over time we learn to doubt ourselves because other people doubted us. But when we came into this world, we didn't doubt ourselves. Do you think any baby doubts its ability to walk? Doesn't seem like it, right? None of them seem hesitant to begin walking. They just start doing it. And if they fall over, they get right back up and try again. They don't start doubting themselves and beating themselves up with their thoughts, or so we think. I mean, we can't really verify a baby's thoughts because we can't jump in their head. But since they continuously try over and over again without giving up, that tells us that they probably don't have a critic in their head that tells them they're not good enough to learn how to walk. Because if they did, then maybe we'd see them give up. But they don't. So none of us were born with that self-critic in our heads. We were trained, we were conditioned to have it by society, by our teachers, by all those things that I already mentioned. So knowing that, realize that that voice isn't you. It's not your voice. It's society speaking, well, it's society basically getting into your head when you were growing up and starting to criticize you then. So don't think of that voice as actually being a part of you. That helped me tremendously with rejecting it, because then I started thinking of that voice as this external thing. I started thinking of it as not a part of me. I started thinking of it as like almost an alien that was placed there to make me doubt myself and to try to trip me up, but now I can just say, screw you, I'm not going to listen to you. And I don't. So train yourself to think that way as well. Realize that that negative voice is not you. It's your bullies when you were growing up. It's your teachers that doubted you. It's your parents, God forbid, if they weren't supportive and they actually doubted you. It's all of those things in one. It's basically anyone who doubted us growing up. We started to somewhat internalize their doubts, and at some point we started believing their bullshit and taking it upon ourselves, and we started basically producing more of it ourselves in our heads. So just reject all of it and stop tolerating that negative voice in your head. It will help you tremendously with raising your self-esteem. Now, on to the next thing, and this is a very important one. Cut out the negative people in your life. Quite often, another huge factor in our self-esteem is who we surround ourselves with. And if you've surrounded yourself with people who aren't good for you, bad friends, or maybe even your family members, some of them are toxic or bad for you, or hopefully not, but even your relationship partners could be this way as well, then you need to cut them off, or at least spend way less time around them. If they're bad sources or bad influences on you, should I say, if they make you feel worse about yourself, then they don't deserve a spot in your life. And if you keep them around, it's going to be very difficult for you to raise your self-esteem because they're always going to be around to basically bring it back down, to criticize you, to hurl insults at you, to not support you, make you not feel good enough. So, cut out negative people in your life. I mean, when I did that, it helped me so much because those people just have a knack at making you feel not good enough. So the solution is just to cut ties with them because then you won't have that negative source in your life. Think of them almost as like a negative voice that's not in your head, but instead external to you. But since they're external, you can literally just choose not to listen to them anymore by cutting them out of your life. And now suddenly you won't have that extra negative voice spewing venom at you anymore, or spewing doubt at you, or just being unsupportive on your journey. So that's another great way of raising your self-esteem. Just cut off all the people who aren't good for you, people who don't even deserve a spot in your life anyway. And if they are your family, which makes it a bit more difficult to cut them off completely, then at least just spend less time around them. And if you still live with your parents and they're not supportive, try to just avoid being around them too much. And when they say negative things or aren't supportive of you, just be supportive of yourself and reject all the crap that they say. In the moment, you can just nod and act like you agree with their crap, but in your head, you should be just hurling everything that you wish you could actually say to them, but don't actually say it. Just say it in your head and reject all their crap, but in person, in real life, should I say, just nod and agree so you don't create any arguments, and then just go on and get the hell away from them. That's what I would do. But anyway, on to the next thing, and this is another really important one. Get to know yourself really well, because this has a huge benefit to it. It helps you figure out your worth. Self-worth is incredibly important, and it's another huge thing that boosts your self-esteem. Because if you don't know what you bring to the table, if you don't know what makes you unique, then how are you going to have high self-esteem? Because you're probably not going to think much of yourself. You're not going to think that you have anything going for you, that you have any skills or personality traits that are unique, that set you apart from other people, that make you who you are. So spend time getting to know yourself really well. And what I did to do this was literally just meditating on the question of who am I and just answering it. I used to do that when I would wake up in the morning or before going to bed at night, and I would just sit in that question for about like 5 minutes and just list off personality traits and adjectives that described who I was, what made me me. And the more you do that, you start to develop a good idea of who you are. And the more that you know yourself, you're going to find some hidden gems about yourself, and that will naturally boost your self-esteem. But also, like I said, it just develops your self-worth, and that alone will boost your self-esteem. So figure out who you are, sit in that meditation of who am I, and just answer it as honestly as possible. And after you've done that for you could probably even start making great progress even within a week. But I used to do that for I don't even know how many months in a row. But over time, I got to know myself so well that I stopped doing that meditation because I had so much self-awareness that I didn't need to do it anymore. It was something I could almost do actively now because I did it for so much that I was then able to know who I was from that point onward. So it's an incredibly useful, I guess, habit to develop in your life, and I would highly suggest it because when you raise your self-worth, so too will your self-esteem rise. Well, that's pretty much everything that I have for you today. So just to summarize it all, practice that self-love, start rejecting that negative voice in your head, cut off negative people in your life, and then get to know yourself so that you can develop your self-worth. When you do all those things, it should raise your self-esteem because, I mean, it certainly did for me. But I would love to hear your own experience with this. If you put these things into practice in your own life, come back to this video in like however much time, weeks or months, and let me know how your journey is going now and whether or not these tips actually helped, because I would love to hear that. But anyway, otherwise, the easiest way you can support me is just like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Arrivederci!